As you're watching the screen, you see footage of two occurrences that have taken place during the tenure of my next guest, who is the city manager of Northport, Florida. So you see footage of Hurricane Ian, as well as the high-profile murder-suicide of Gabby, Petito, and Brian Laundrie. So he talks about rebuilding and healing in our upcoming interview. Good people, welcome to another episode of Generation Motivation, the podcast. I am your host, Jaysnipes, aka the Podcast of the People. This gentleman that I have here to my left that has a beautiful t-shirt on. I love that t-shirt. Hey, Aggie Pride, first and foremost. Aggie Pride. And secondly, this gentleman is actually like my second brother. A brother from another mother. We've been friends for years, and it's just beautiful to see the progression. And this is actually the second time around on the podcast. So he was actually on the podcast a year ago, and a lot has happened in his tenure, and we're going to dive right into it. But first and foremost, I want to introduce Jerome Fletcher, city manager of Northport, Florida. Jerome, welcome to Generation Motivation, the podcast.
Jay, thanks for having me again. I do appreciate it. You're right. It is brother from another mother. It's been a long time, and man, we've been through a lot. When you said that, it brought back two things that I just thought of. One, you were the only friend that I had who had their own car when we were back in high school. And two, you were also the only friend whose parents were still married that was in my circle of my entire people who I knew, which is still crazy to think about that to this day. I mean, because your parents are married a long time and they taught you a lot and taught me a lot and set a great example. But man, just think about that. That's strong.
That's awesome. Hey, for the viewers, that inscription on his T-shirt, North Carolina A&T State University. We both went to A&T. We were roommates, friends prior to going to A&T. For those that don't know, I was about to say in my eyes, but I'm gonna say, nationally recognized as the best HBCU in the country. And matter of fact, one of the best universities in the country. I'm not even gonna just say HBCU.
That's right.
But Jerome, once again, like I was telling the viewers, your second time around, you are the city manager of Northport, Florida. When I interviewed you last year, you were just taking over that position. A lot was going on. I know you had a lot of goals that you wanted to get accomplished for, the city of Northport, and a lot has taken place. We go jump into it, but a lot has taken place in that 1 year tenure. So how does it feel to have that 1 year under your belt?
It was an amazing year. A lot of people look back at all the things that we did and they say, oh, it was so tough, it was so hard. But, the role itself is not an easy role. It is a very fulfilling role. But, when you talk about some of the things that we went through and how we handled it, and I know, like you said, we'll get into some of that. But what I don't want people to lose is the focus on the positive. We're out there changing lives and helping people in our city. Our city is about 82,000 people, and we have lots of challenges that any city would have. But when you're in a growth spurt the way that we are, where you've been in, it's more rural than built out and dense, and you have to change people's mindset and get them to understand that you're growing as a city, and you can't put that genie back in the bottle. So you have to do the best by their lives, and you get a daily joy of making sure that people's quality of life is increased on an everyday basis, and it never gets old, and you never stop doing it. So challenges or not, the job has to get done.
So let me ask you this. So for those that don't necessarily know what that role entails, what exactly does a city manager do?
So we have a council manager form of government, commission manager form of government here in Southwest Florida, and that's the predominant form of government throughout the country. Some are strong mayor, but commission manager means that there are 5 elected officials on our board. They get together and they select a city manager. The city manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the entire city, whether it's public works, libraries, parks and recs, city hall, everything that from top to bottom of the city. And the board is responsible for policy decisions. So when they want to discuss and vote on items that impact the entire community to put into law, that's what they do. And then they hold me accountable for the budget creation and other, important functions so that we can provide the best quality of life for all the citizens.
Okay. Got you. So I guess going into that, that position, did you feel a lot of pressure upon yourself? I mean, you've had high profile positions, prior to that. But what type of weight was on your shoulders, or did you feel pressure kind of going into it?
I would say I felt the responsibility. When you want the role and you get it, then you have to step up and you have to do it. What I would say is the responsibility is people, a lot of times they get into the points where they say, well, I was good enough in that job, so I'm going to bring exactly what I brought from that job to this job, and I'm going to be great at this job with those same skills. And that's not the case. You have to evolve yourself into what the new job needs while you continue your growth pattern and your maturation so that you can be the best in that role. Because, I'm all about, daily improvement and, just wanting to be the best. And my staff are like, well, what do you want to be the best at? Everything. It's like, the thing that bothers me is that I don't know everything. And realistically, I can never know everything. That's why you surround yourself with subject matter experts who have the experience, and you trust them and you empower them in their respective disciplines, whether it's, HR, finance, human, all those kind of things. But, I want my knowledge to keep increasing so I can be a better leader for them. But I wouldn't say pressure. I would just say, you can't ask for something and then not do it once you get it. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it's, and I think I said this a year ago, but once again, man, it's just amazing to see the growth, man. It's just amazing to see. You've always had that mentality of I'm a go-getter, and I'm not going to stop until, and like you said, I'm not going to stop until I'm the best. Now, granted, there were times that you wanted to be the best, but I was better at a lot of things. When we competed head to head, I'm gonna throw that out there. But
sleeping and eating count. But if you want to count those two things, yeah, you got me.
I think you were better eater than I was. I might have been a sleeper.
This is true. I'm trying to steal your weight.
But seriously though, you've always had the mentality, and that's one thing I've always admired about you. You've always had that mentality of, hey man, nothing is going to be handed to me on a silver platter. I'm always going to have to work hard for it. I'm going to make the sacrifices. A lot of decisions that you've had to make, have definitely impacted, your family directly. And your family always looks up to you and say, I know, either my father or my husband is making decisions in the best interest of the family to help, move the family along and as well as your career, man. So, and all of those decisions have turned out to be the right decision to the point where you're actually a city manager, man. And that's a beautiful thing, man. So, kudos to you. I'm definitely proud of you always. And I tell you that off camera. So I want to tell you that on camera, man. I want everyone to know he put in a lot of work to get to this position, man. And it's just great to see that it's paying off.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I always appreciate the love and support. It's, it takes a village, and whether it's Drew and the kids and, the family that we have here, that we keep moving in the right direction. You have to be an example for the children and make sure that they don't look back and say, well, he did this, so I'm going to do this. So if they ever look back and say that, I want them to look back and say, he did this right, he did this right, he did this right, he did this right. And that doesn't mean that he or my daughter need to do everything that I did, but at least they would have seen what a positive example looks like. I think when you see that positivity in your life growing up, it just helps you be less victim to fall and into dangerous patterns, because you've seen what it brings you. And you've seen the rewards, the rewards of, hard work makes you an addict of wanting to work harder. That's what it brings. It's like, okay, I can get this and that through this and that, okay, then I'm going to do it. And then I want this and that and this and that. So it really does sort of trigger that addiction. And then as city manager, there are people here who I meet recently, and they're like, okay, so what's next? What are you going to do next? You've done this well. Where are you going next? That's how it works, right? You keep going, keep growing.
Right.
And in some sense, they're correct, because that's what my trajectory has been to get me here. But now I'm like, no, I don't want to do anything else. I wanted this role. I want it to be here. We love it here. We're in Southwest Florida, which is about an hour south of Tampa. It's beautiful. It was 85 degrees here today. I don't know what it was in Atlanta, but it wasn't 85 degrees.
No, 66.
Yeah. So think of 85 degrees in the winter all the time. It's just a gorgeous quality of life.
Right.
And when you talk about, the family leading by example, what we did, and when you think about it, this was the first time where we ever truly chose where we wanted to live. And it was somewhere where the quality of life matched our spirit. So very happy.
Yeah, I know, it's funny because you, I want to say you told me maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. You told me that you were trying to decide on what location you wanted to retire in. And if I'm not mistaken, it was that destination, and you made that come to fruition.
Man.
Yeah.
There's so many people back up in North Carolina before we moved from North Carolina up to Northern Virginia in the DC area. And we were there for 9 years. Who, when I got down here, they said, you finally did it.
Finally did it.
They're like, you've been talking about Florida forever. And I was like, it was a no-brainer for us just to have the quality of life that we wanted. And then, North Carolina, where our families are and our roots are, was the only other option. So,
yeah.
We're definitely happy with our choice. But, it's like.
Oh, North Carolina was your only other option. You lied to me, because at one time you said something about Atlanta because you were trying to, get together with us. But don't worry about it, man. I called you out.
That would have been a short commute for you to get to North Carolina, but as having aging parents, that was the only other consideration, was because you want to spend more time with them than not, and you don't want them to have to travel more than they have to. So at some point, the burden will be back on our end to do more traveling up there, and that should be easier on us than it is on them, since we didn't get to North Carolina and we are in Florida.
Right. Hey, so let's kind of reflect on your first year in your role. So is the position, what you thought it was going to be? What were some of the challenges? We'll talk about natural disasters and things of that nature as well. We'll slowly get to that, but just the position in itself.
So, I mean, when I wanted to get in this job, I thought I knew how great it would feel. I had no idea how actually awesome it would be. We have about 800 some odd employees, like I said, 82,000 people. And just to know that you're there to do the best for them every single day, and the people are following you because you are creating a path of quality leadership where you're inspiring them, and you're nurturing them and growing them and challenging them to be the best for these people. It just feels so good. And in Montgomery, which I was grateful for the opportunity, and I've been grateful for all my opportunities that I've had. But one of the reasons why people leave those opportunities is because you feel like your voice isn't heard anymore, or that people sort of tune you out. They can't tune you out as city manager. And, you take that voice, but you also have that responsibility, like I said earlier, to make sure that you're using it the right way. And people who are following you, that means you are held accountable, you're transparent, you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And as I tell people, we do the best for the most. That's our motto. We can't please everyone. I can't try to please everyone. We do the best for the most. And if people understand that, then they understand that you can never judge my relationship with you on how much I tell you yes, because I'm going to have to tell you no at some point. At some point, it's undeniable. It's going to happen. So we have to have a solid foundation of respect and trust to know that, okay, if and when I do that, then it brings on, well, how do we get to the same outcome that we should be trying to achieve? Or how do we pivot and find a different direction? But it has been a phenomenal experience. And thankfully, we have an excellent team that we've rounded out, with high-performing leaders. And we also have a commission. We have a 5-person commission, and the majority of that commission has been so supportive of me since I've been there. So the 5 commission are my boss, so to speak. And So when I came in, four of them supported me, and to this day, four of them support me, and one does not. And as Biggie said, I sure caught beef with you know who, and I did. And it was because there was a bias there from the beginning, and people have different biases for different reasons. And Florida is a what I would call a hyper political state, and which is not the way you heard it when I said it, because there are people on both sides of the political party who just, I get along with extremely well. So it's not even on that line. But when you have a certain bias towards a certain person from day one, and that doesn't change from whatever you've done in positive natures, and you get all these accolades and support, that there's something deeper than that. And that's something that, has to be acknowledged. And, it is what it is.
Gotcha. Well, hey, you know what? There's always going to be challenges, regardless. Always going to be challenges in any and everything that you do. It's great leaders are made from having those challenges and being able to overcome and being able to learn from their history and be forward thinking at the same time. So with that being said, man, I mean, hey, you have a year under your belt. You can't please everyone. I mean, granted, I've known you for years. I don't necessarily say, I'm not going to go out and say that you've always been the person that wanted to please everyone. You've always been the person that wanted. No, and I'm not saying that to even be sarcastic. I
say the same thing. I said people don't know about me.
He has never been just like, someone that's, I'm going to say this because it's what that person wants to hear per se. You've always been the type of person like, this is what I believe. This is why I believe it. Now you can take it or leave it, and not in a mean way, right. In a way of like, I have to stand on my truth. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a good leader is. You know what I'm saying? And then when you get more information, if you want to go back and look back at it and say, you know what? Now that I have more information, now my viewpoint is changing on this. But until you are able to show me otherwise, then this is how I feel about this particular situation.
Yeah, that sums it up in a nutshell.
Right.
It's amazing how many people you meet and you're out with people and they're like, oh, you're city manager, aren't you supposed to please me and do what I say and give me what I want? And I'm like, that's not the job. I'm like, the job is to do the best for the most and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Right. And while doing that, I hope that we can be together and, we're rowing in the same direction with the same intended outcome and sharing the same value system. But if we don't, and we have to go this way, I have to say, I'm okay with that. And for the most part, I am. But what I would say is your volume of work speaks for itself. When you do things consistently and you are someone who has quality, authentic relationships with people who know that when you have tried your best and done your best, and at the end of the day, you can't please them, they are willing to accept that. That is where, some of the magic in people's relationships happen. But when people think that you're supposed to be there to please them and you can't tell them no, and how dare you, then, again, we're not in alignment with what we're trying to get to.
Exactly. So, like I made reference to earlier, about the challenges. Now we can kind of talk a little bit about some of those high profile, incidences that took place in the state, obviously in the city as well. So, murder, suicide, very high profile case that took place when you first came in, all the way to, Hurricane Ian recently, hitting and causing, a lot of damage, and now the city has to try to rebuild, and so you have to kind of put a plan in place for that. But just speak on a few of those occurrences and how you felt, I guess, having to face those head on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to talk about them, as they progress through the year. Right. I started on October 1 of 2021. And, that walked into the Gabby Petito case with Brian Laundrie. And, that case captured the nation just based on the fact that you have two young people of that age, which is, such a tragedy, just to think. I want to say she might have been 22, if I remember correctly, maybe 24, but definitely very early. that's half of our life. Can you imagine all the things she never got to experience? And then when you had the situation where, in my opinion, her parents felt he and his family had an obligation to tell them what happened to their child, and they didn't. And even though his family was still in Northport when all of this happened, and they had recently moved up to New York before they took the road trip. It was just such an example of how domestic violence and abuse can just lead to the most worst outcomes that you could think of. Um, it it turns out it's still going on right now, and they're trying to figure out, well, what did the family know, his family know about her death, and there's a lawsuit pending, and they've also went back and sued the police department in Utah from when they did not stop the incident from happening, when they stopped them and then let them go together as opposed to separating them. Just getting to that resolution of finding him, which came shortly, about less than a month after I got on the job. We still just had that lingering effect as a community of what we actually had to move forward with. And at the end of the day, you have to pick up the pieces. At the end of the day, you have to, accept your responsibility in something that happens. And hopefully we'll never have another high profile case like that again, where, it captures so many people for all the wrong reasons. But, my heart goes out to her family especially. And, I know their family lost a son, but, he and his actions are the cause of pain for a lot of people. And it's so unfortunate, but it's one of those things where you learn how to deal with the communication of a crisis, how you handle it going forward, what you should have done, lessons learned. And I think that from our standpoint, we've got some stronger people in places so that we can communicate better and more effectively. And I think our chief of police did a great job in order to handle the search, and all the media and our PIO at the time, the different news outlets and all the different pieces of attention that were on us as a city, internationally. And that was in October, November of 2021. Mm-hmm. Then in January, we had a cyber attack. And I know that was something very popular that was going around throughout the country, where, threat actors were invading on cities and municipalities and shut them down, and, accessing your records and wanting you to pay a ransom to get it back. And
right.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to say that happened in Atlanta somewhere, or somewhere it happened somewhere in Georgia, but it did.
Yes, it was definitely. I can't remember specifically where, but in Georgia. It may have been in Atlanta, actually.
And it's just they prey on vulnerable parties, and unfortunately, governments have not been traditionally known to keep up with the best and the most advanced technology to offset cyber attacks. So when we were hit, they shut down our systems, and then you can't tell the public everything that you want to tell the public at the time. So they shut down our systems. They asked us for money, and our IT director, thank goodness, was good, and he had been there I think maybe 2 years before I got there. And they were like, had it been under the prior staffing that was there, we may not have been able to recover as fast as we did. So by the time they actually attacked us, and then they went like on radio silence. Like they just wanted you to wait. They wanted you to sit and do nothing so you could feel the pain and then want to pay them when they came back. Well, by the time they came back, we had able to rebuild and restore most of what we knew that they had touched. So we actually did not pay them the ransom. And then we rebuilt our systems and shut down what they had and the information that they had. Of course, we went through the same things that you see other places go through when they talk about protecting your credit, signing up for a year, which, at one point was like, oh my God, what's going to happen now with everything that people have out there regarding fraud protection and everything else. It's just like another layer that we all have to go through. And unfortunately, it's another just piece of living here that we have adapted to. But still, you start mentioning the word threat actors and ransoms, and if I had hair on the back of my neck, it'd start to stand up, because it just takes you back to some darker places. So that was in January of 2022.
Yes.
And in April of 2022, we had a retreat with our commission. And the short version of that is, we have, I have all kinds of staff around me, and they were all, we were all asking questions about whether or not we wanted to be. The retreat was with myself and our commission, and it was a team building retreat. And the goal of the retreat was to talk about some strategic objectives that we had that we wanted to complete as a leadership team. But there was also some efforts that we wanted to clean up and be a more unified team through some team building efforts. And they were broadcast. Well, first of all, in Florida, transparency is king. So you really have everything our commission do has to be in the sunshine, as they say. It's a sunshine law. So everything that we do is in the sunshine. You don't hide anything, nor should you hide anything. And some of our staff, as directors, they wanted, of course, as they should, to be able to listen to it. So because their actions and our actions in that retreat directly impact how they do their jobs. So we had the retreat. We let them view it during the retreat. About 25, 30 minutes into the retreat, we asked the people who were at the retreat, myself and all the commissioners, to speak up so people who were listening could listen to the retreat so they could hear them. We all had microphones at our table, and all of our meetings are broadcast anyway. And then so after the retreat, there was a commissioner who had gotten some feedback that she felt was not very positive. So she felt like we were all picking on her. And by the way, you didn't tell her that everyone else was going to be listening to this retreat. So she took it as a personal offense, yes. And so that she could go back and say, well, you did this on purpose, and all of you tried to gang up on me. And, she made it seem like, this is what bothered me. She made it seem like, one, that it was intentional and personal to her, which it wasn't. And there is an accreditation that I have called ICMA, which is International City Managers Association Credential Managership, which I had just gotten that April 1st. And that's the combination of education and years of experience. And as a city manager, that's what you want besides your name. You want that credentialing. It means everything. And so, she said that, my actions were possibly unethical or illegal. And, she was going to go file a complaint with them. And, she really did not allow for what I would say to be any sort of grace for anyone, for myself, to make a mistake during this job that I had been in for 6 months. And to me, that goes back to the biases that we talked about earlier, but now you see that we're kind of building on the foundation. So she had some of her friends make public comments about how terrible it was, and they anonymously went and complained to ICMA, and ICMA came back and said, hey, we've investigated, there's nothing to see here, have a nice life. And that was because once you look at the facts and the details of what happened, you could tell it wasn't intentional. And two, if you're in the Sunshine State and you're all about transparency and you preach transparency, why would you have a problem with someone seeing something that you do in a public setting anyway? That's what you should want. Anything you say should be public anyway. But, when people try to go after and take something that you work so hard to get in that manner, that's hard to get past. I mean, so once you do that and you've shown that's who you are, because there's a lot of people, especially people who like to play in political theater, it doesn't matter whether or not it's true or false. It just likes to be said. And once you say it publicly, then they like to build on it. So then you're in the process of cleaning and clearing it up more often than not. But again, we're not going to be bullied, and we're not going to be pushed around. And for someone to be here and recognize that, okay, I'm going to stand my ground. And if you never had that happen to you before, then I'm sorry, but I'm going to be the first person, because you're not going to push me around. So that was the second thing, or third thing in the year.
That was the third. And then Hurricane Ian, obviously that's gripped the nation, and now you're in the, process of trying to put all the pieces back together.
Yeah. So Hurricane Ian came in my last week of my first year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like it was terrible, because the hurricane season had been going so well, and then you get to the end, and you have this near Category 5 hurricane that comes right through your city, and the damage was tremendous. Thankfully, we only lost about 5 lives during that time, and that was people who had gotten stuck out in the storm and could not get the medical attention that they needed. But the city itself was just ravaged from all of the destruction from the buildings. So many trees were down. We've removed over 2 million pounds of debris at this time. We're trying to just create programs of recovery. FEMA's helping the best that they can with how to rebuild some of these homes. And some of these homes will be to the point where FEMA won't be able to help them rebuild. And then, you get to the point of how these families are going to have to rebuild their lives from what they had. This is where people have passed down wealth through their generations through their homes. And now you're telling me that the home is gone. So, what do they do now? Do they sell their land and then they go buy a new home? We see that the home prices now are astronomical. So, it's not even the same comparison of how to move forward. So, people have some tough decisions to make. And I think that, and I believe that while we go through our next budgeting session this year, we're going to try to create some opportunities that we can help businesses build back better, whether it's through some building improvement programs, some homes build back better, whether it's those who were still displaced. How can we help them, get back on their feet? I think we as a city, we have an obligation to help as much as we can. Government can't solve all your problems, but it should be part of the solution process, which again, in Florida is kind of funny because in Florida, and which is the most of the country, I feel like I would say, people want to limit government. They want to shrink government. They don't want government to have as much control because there's a lower trust in government. But yet when something goes wrong, who do you want to be there to help you? Government. Right. So, from that standpoint, it's just a matter of we have to make sure that the city can recover in a way that is right for the community, while at the same time, before the storm, we were the fourth fastest growing city in the country. And yes,
I didn't know
that. And that's because of the rate that we were growing and the fact that everyone else had, traditionally already grown around us. Tampa's already grown out as much as they can. Sarasota City has already grown out. So now is our turn. The secret why we're growing so fast now is because we were so slow to grow 10 or 15 years ago.
Gotcha.
And that's just opportunity for today. So, but at the end of the day, the hurricane.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say it took its toll. Matter of fact, and I know we have limited time, but I was going to say, I mean, I know it definitely affected you personally in terms of, power and water and how I can't imagine not having, what was it? What you were without water for about 3 days? 4 days?
Water for 4 days, power without 5 days. And good gracious. Before the hurricane, you asked me which one I would have been without first. I was like, give me the electricity. Give me the water.
That
water where you really need it. And, our Florida Power and Light, they did a great job to get as many people back on their feet. They was one of our partners who, just was, you just get this newfound respect from your partners when you have to go through the trenches together at the same time through a crisis. And it builds long-lasting relationships, unfortunately. But it was definitely, as bad as it was then, there are still people who are displaced from their homes right now, 3 months later. And to think about that, you're being gone. Jay, there was people who didn't have insurance. It's like not I don't mean like flood insurance. I mean like roof insurance, like regular insurance.
Like
now home gone. How can they rebuild? I mean, so I believe we have an obligation to help. We do not have an obligation to solve. And I hope that people take what we provide as hopefully some options, as something that they can take to build their lives back better so that their families, their children, and their children's children can still know a good quality of life in our city.
So with these, I normally ask 2 questions, but since you were on, a year ago, I'll kind of bypass my legacy question and my how do you feel as though you're motivating your generation question. But with these last couple of minutes, what are your goals for your second year in your position? What type of impact are you looking to make?
Yeah, thanks. I have a few goals for the year, and one I'll say is, the one thing that knowing me and, of course, my mother raising me would always say, you better always stand up for yourself. You better never let no one push you around. You better make sure that, you can do it in a professional, respectful way, but, we're not having any of that. I think that we are setting an example of making sure that we stand up for what's right when it's right. It's easy to just fall into well, we'll just give them what they want. Let's just go ahead and, bow down. And I'm like, that's not what we're doing. Because that's the example that you've done for all this time. And look where that's gotten you. You've gotten a behavior that doesn't reflect the morals and the values of what we are here to lead when we talk about the volume of people that we're there to lead. So I'm excited about the support I have from the commission as we build a better team out, because it all starts with the leadership team at the top. So if we get it right there, then we can just push it down and have cascading commitments that go down into our organization, and then everyone sort of sings off of the same sheet of music. I cannot express how important that is, so that people understand it starts at the top. People are always going to look at your behavior. So you make sure you do the right things at the right times, and then that's how that happens. The other thing I'll say is, of course, the Hurricane Ian recovery. I feel like that's going to be an important topic for this year, because I think that people are still suffering, and we can't let them suffer in silence. We got to figure out a way to help them and rally the people, not only in our city, but in our region. And lastly, I'll say, we have a catchphrase called Community of Unity that we started maybe 8 or 9 months ago. And everything that we do and everything that we have challenges with, we want to make sure that our community rallies around and knows that we can solve things together. We get together and we discuss problems. We don't admire problems. We discuss them, and then we move on to solutions. I think that when you start to admire problems for too long, then that's how things sort of just never get solved, because you just sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a big and beautiful problem. It is. Now go fix it. So, as we do that and our community comes together united, I think that the strength of it will show, and our future still looks as bright as it did before all the things that I mentioned happened today on the podcast.
Man, we have about a minute or so left, and hey, I just want to circle back around, man, let you know that I'm definitely proud of you, man. I've always pulled for you. Continue to just continue to be a trailblazer, continue to just exude that same confidence that you've always had ever since I've known you. Continue to be a great leader that you are, continue to be a great father, husband, and just continue to be a great man. You know what I'm saying? And I'm proud of you. Aggie pride, keep doing what you're doing, man. And hey, definitely hats off to you. And we definitely appreciate everything that you're doing, man.
Well, same to you, my brother. I appreciate it. It's been a long journey. We've been through a lot. So
hey, that'll be for another podcast.
The untold stories.
We can't tell too many stories.
Right, but it all led us to who we are and where we are today, and I wouldn't change any of it. And it's been, as I look back and I reflect over the positive points in my life, you are at the center of just about all of them. It started back when we were 16, and just to think that the 30 years since then, everything that's happened is just amazing. So I thank you for being along the journey with me, bro. For real.
My man. Hey, I appreciate you, man. And to the listener, thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of Generation Motivation, the podcast. I am your host, Jaysnipes, aka the Podcasterofthepeople, and this is Jerome Fletcher. And hey, Aggie Pride. Till next time, I holla.
Aggie Pride.